I'm Jim Tech with Now Media. With me, Ian Burns, out there in our nation's capital in Ottawa. We got a really big show as usual, and beautiful weather here as well. But Carney touts minerals deal with Germans. That's the big deal, I guess. We're going to talk a lot about that. Government research says Canadians wanted to hit the Americans back with tariffs. Canadian money continues to flow into the U.S. Finger pointing continues with the BC Ferries deal. A lot of continuing things. Canada Post record quarterly loss. And with all the tension on trucking, will that lead to safer roads? Christian concert held in Kelowna. Surprise, surprise. No security concerns. Surprise, surprise. Hey? But we'll kick it off with Mark Carney. He's on his European tour, almost like... what's that? Chevy Chase's European tour. I think this is his third time in Europe now, and this time maybe he's got a deal. He's touting a deal anyway. So let's listen in on Mark Carney here.
Thanks for the question. Look, there's a huge range of immediate opportunities with respect to critical metals and minerals, and there are medium-term opportunities with respect to all forms of energy, including LNG and hydrogen. And I'll quickly explain how we make those happen. Our government is in the process of unleashing $500 billion of investment in energy infrastructure, port infrastructure, particularly intelligence infrastructure as well, with AI. And a number of those investments, the first of which we will be formally announcing in the next 2 weeks, are with respect to new port infrastructure. And some of the examples in the public domain will include from reinforcing and building on the Port of Montreal, Contrecoeur, a new port, effectively in Churchill, Manitoba, which would open up enormous LNG plus other opportunities, and other East Coast ports for those critical metals and minerals. So there is a lot happening. It's the number one focus of this government is to build that infrastructure, and particularly infrastructure that helps us deepen our partnership with our European partners in particularly.
You what, mate? Just the usual, really, isn't it?
The German reporters weren't buying it very easily. They were saying, well, what can you get us now? Because they need it now. So here's the question here from a German reporter. What can you actually deliver?
Range of immediate opportunities with respect to critical metals and minerals.
No, one before that. Yeah, that one? That's the one.
Prime Minister, just one question about raw materials. Could you please explore a bit more what Canada can realistically actually offer to Germany and Europe, given the fact that ports on the East Coast and also pipelines are still lacking?
Thanks for the question. Look, there's a huge range of immediate opportunities with respect to critical metals and minerals, and there are medium-term opportunities with respect to all forms of energy, including LNG and hydrogen.
Okay. 3 years ago, they asked for LNG.
Term.
Nothing. And I mean, this is a deal that it gets worse as we continue down this clip parade here. But here's why the Germans seem to be so desperate. We're going to play this small clip here.
There's a huge range of immediate opportunities with respect to critical metals and minerals, and there are medium-term opportunities with respect to all forms of energy, including LNG and hydrogen. And I'll quickly explain how we make those happen. Our government is in the process of unleashing $500 billion of investment in energy infrastructure.
It's been disastrous for Germany. I mean, this is, you know, they were the poster child, Europe's poster child of green energy. And I caught the train from Hamburg to Berlin, and every field, it seems, is covered in solar panels and windmills. But it's not doing the trick, as they found out, you know, when the gas supply went up, you know, the price of gas went up. They were just really, really hurt. And now the electricity price in Germany is the highest in Europe. It's about twice as high as it is across the water there in Sweden, where they're running on nuclear and hydroelectricity. And this is affecting industry. 30% of German businesses told their big Chamber of Commerce in a survey that they were looking to relocate offshore. And this is happening. You can see German industry is declining very quickly, and they're moving when they can to places where there is cheaper electricity. It's been a disaster.
Let's cut that there. Yeah, so Germany and Europe definitely have really hurt themselves when it comes to energy. And Canada did the same thing.
Well, at least Canada has the ability to, if it wants to have it domestically sourced and have pipelines.
We self-inflicted our pain.
But so did the Germans to an extent. If you were in charge of Germany, you might say, and this is certainly what previous chancellors of Germany said, one of your priorities would be to have a good relationship with Russia, because that's where the energy comes from. And the energy is the first ingredient in the German economic miracle. And they didn't, did they? They allowed themselves to embark upon a hostile relationship with Germany, which is not something that the Chinese did, not something that the Indians did. Loads of other countries chose not to do that, but Germany went all in on it. So there's that. But I mean, what I was going to say was, at least if we wanted to fix it here in Canada or expand it, it's quite easy to do that. Whereas the Germans now are relying on massive tankers to sail across the Atlantic Ocean with a little bit of gas to fuel their economy. I mean, that is so inefficient. That's so stupid. It's so expensive. When they used to just turn a tap on, it would come from, Russia, come from Siberia ultimately. They can't do that now. And it's so much more expensive. It's so futile and ridiculous. And you can see the Canadian government, Hodgson said within 5 years, or as quick as 5 years, Canada could export LNG to Europe. I mean, that's closer to meaning something. That's closer to it being English, but still doesn't really mean anything, does it? It's still pie in the sky stuff. This government won't even be in power then in 5 years. There'll be a new government, whether it's Liberal or Conservative. Carney might not even be Prime Minister. But what I found interesting is in the press release, which is often where they, from the Prime Minister's office, it's often where they tell you more than Carney does, because obviously Carney, as we've mentioned, isn't particularly fluent in the English language. But when you look at the PMO's press release, they hide LNG right down the bottom, and they mix it up with hydrogen. And then straight away, after the first mention of LNG, they provide a link to something called, on the Canadian government's website, called the Canada-Germany Energy Partnership, which is a memorandum of understanding signed between the Germans and the Canadians. And the top line of that is, commit to each achieving net zero emissions by 2050 and implement the Paris Agreement on climate change. Where does LNG fit into that? Obviously, we know that the climate fanatics and the net zero fanatics look to LNG as a kind of poison. They don't want anything to do with LNG. They just want solar and wind. So, I mean, the whole thing is very messy. And if you're thinking now of being bullish on Canadian LNG and maybe moving money into that, I wouldn't. I don't think this doesn't fill me with confidence anyway.
So here's the Polish ambassador taking a shot at Canada here as he's sitting down with CBC here. Dan Elvis put this out here. Let's play this clip here first and we'll talk about it.
Our former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau kind of famously said there was no business case to sell Canadian LNG to Europe. Well, when you look at what the Americans are doing, they sent 44 million tons of LNG to Europe last year. They're obviously seeing a business case for what they're producing. Is Poland interested in Canada's natural resources and LNG in particular? Is that something that you would like to see advance as these two countries get closer together?
Yeah. Well, remember, some of that LNG that is coming from United States to Europe, to Poland, is also Canadian LNG. But it's being sold for a much higher price, I would say, than when it would come from Canada. Yes, we are constantly interested. We would like the Canadian LNG market to open to Europe. We would like to see the Canadian gas flowing to the east coast on Canada, and the Canadian gas flowing in European pipelines. This is, one of the energy topics that we are working on with Canadians for a number of years. There are others which are also very significant, and we are much more successful in the other areas than gas so far. But if you're able to make a push in that regard, that will be to the benefit of Europe, and that will be to the benefit.
He's actually just poking fun at us. Like, we actually sell our LNG to the Americans at a discount. They mark it up and sell it to the Europeans.
Certainly poking fun at a section of Canadian society and the embarrassingly incompetent and foolish ruling class in this country. I mean, part of the ruling class, or like, you know, a kind of byblaw, an auxiliary part of the ruling class, is the CBC. And look at them sat there. Do they feel no shame? They totally bought into Trudeau's brain-dead statement a few years ago about how there's no business case. And they just kind of let that die. There was no pressure from the CBC. This obviously false statement from an obviously ignorant prime minister, an ideological prime minister. And then they just let it lie. And in the meantime, as is usually the case, the Americans have just come and eaten our lunch, and now they're having a laugh, even selling Canadian
even the
at,
Polish ambassador understands
increased price.
Even the Polish ambassador understands the farce that's going on. Like, we're actually, because we have no other way to get it to the coast, because they killed the Northern Gateway pipeline, they killed the Eastern pipeline, and so we sell it into the U.S. and then the Americans mark it up and resell it.
I mean, you say the Polish ambassador. I would say the manager of the Tim Hortons near the CBC studio, he knows as well. You know, yeah. This guy here driving a truck down the road, he knows. Yeah. Why does the Canadian elite not know? This is, I mean, and it isn't just Canada. Same thing going on in Britain, same thing going on in Germany, believe it or not. Why are these people so stupid? Why do they not see the obvious when completely untrained, uneducated people could point it out in 10 seconds? This is one of the great frustrations of our time, isn't it? And I don't know, but you certainly don't need a Polish ambassador to state the bloody obvious.
The Canadian elite have made good money off of the green energy schemes, though. And we can't even get the documents for some of those schemes. We're going to talk about some of that later. But
that could well be it. And I've mentioned that I'm reading this book called Why Nations Fail. Very, very famous book. And I encourage people to read it. But it's given me a possible way to understand this, which is that sometimes in certain societies, the elite will do something that looks on the face of it to be extraordinarily stupid and to be an act of self-harm for the nation. But in reality, it's not that stupid. It's because it benefits them, even if the rest of the nation suffers.
Yes, the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. Also, Carney was there in Ukraine talking about security net. We got another clip here to play from CTV this time, as Christian Lawyer, the senior fellow McDonald lawyer, calls it as it is here. Let's listen to this clip here.
He's a military analyst, senior fellow at the McDonald-Laurier Institute and the Center for North American Prosperity and Security. Good to see you, Christian, on this Monday. Your take on this visit by Mark Carney to Ukraine, Poland, and eventually to Germany.
Well, look, our big announceable on this visit was that we signed a customs agreement with Ukraine. And we re-announced drones that we had already announced on the occasion of the G7. This is why Canada is not being taken seriously. We may make these types of commitments. These are places that, you know, spending commitments that we might get to. We might grow the Canadian Armed Forces. You know, I do think the Prime Minister has a serious commitment, but it's telling that the Prime Minister, of course, is traveling alone. There's no other European leaders there with him in Ukraine. He was not there at the White House with 7 other European leaders backing Zelensky. It suggests that we have a very large lag to make up for to show that indeed Canada is a country that should have a voice at the table.
What more would you like to see?
A recommitment to the foreign policy instruments in this country. And the way I always sum this up is we've been fighting against the terrain. We should be able to shape the terrain. We shaped the terrain significantly in the aftermath of the Second World War and into the 1950s and 60s, realizing that ultimately we needed to assert our interests. In this very volatile world, it seems to me that we're constantly reacting. And the reason that we're reacting is that we have become significant on the radar of our allies for of what we're not doing or not able to do. And so I always like to term the Prime Minister's commitment, the Prime Minister's investment is actually to make sure that Canada is significant by its insignificance, that we can actually do things, because we might not be conspicuous by our presence, but we are very conspicuous by our absence.
And this kind of a trip, is that part of trying to change the narrative, Christian, about Canada by Carney going in person to these places, trying to shore up some of these relationships, perhaps in a way we did not see under the previous Prime Minister?
Well, I think the narrative is largely for domestic consumption at home, to see like what the wonderful things are that Canada is doing. I think what our allies want to see is actually real commitments, real engagement, real spending, real capability.
Yeah, we want to see all that and a lot more. But yeah, I mean, it was the absence at the White House was really telling. And then going to Ukraine, making these promises, and Canada can't even deliver on its own military, never mind the Ukraine military.
But I think the point that this chap's making is one that we've made many times, which is this period of Liberal government over the last sort of 10 years has been kind of a do-nothing government, hasn't it? It's very reluctant to do anything. And this is what I meant when we were talking about it during the election campaign. It sounded ridiculous when I said it, but I stand by it, that the Liberal Party in the election that's just gone, they were the Conservative option. If you liked what the Liberal Party was saying, that's because you're a Conservative with a small c. You are opposed to things changing rapidly or in any sort of profound way. Whereas Pierre Poilievre was the insurgent, radical change candidate. And it's so odd to say that, but that is the lay of the land right now. This Liberal Party stands for the status quo, and not just the status quo, but it sort of aggressively defends the status quo. And I think what this chap here, this senior fellow at the Macdonald Laurier Institute, what he's saying is the rest of the world obviously knows that. So they know that when somebody like Mark Carney or Justin Trudeau makes an announcement about something, they know that it's like, that's not really going to happen. Because at the end of the day, they're going to have to appease special interests. They're going to have to appease the Quebec lobby, certain First Nations, environmentalists, all the rest of it. Loads of people who are on the take and don't want to be cut off from access to the trough. And Canada or at least the Canadian elite, is too afraid to stir the pot. So nothing happens. And, if you're looking at this, that explains as well the sort of giggles coming from that Polish ambassador. It's just like, yeah, we would like that. We would like you to do something, but you're not going to do anything, are you?
Yeah, sadly, Chrystia Freeland summed it out best when she was running for the Liberal leadership. She said that the Liberals wasted the past decade on virtue signaling and identity politics. And they seem to be continuing down that same path. There's not a lot of change.
Here's to another decade, get the champagne out. That seems to be because let's be honest, the Canadian people, we shouldn't forget this, the Canadian people voted for this again. They did it 3 times with Justin, and they've done it again. They want more of this. So what do you say? I mean, you could argue that there was deception on the part of Mark Carney because he promised all this action. I have some sympathy for that. But realistically, you had to be open to the idea of things not really changing in the first place, didn't you? Because it was the same Liberal team. It was obviously going to be more of the same, wasn't it? So, but I mean, you can't avoid that fact that the Canadian people wanted this, and now they've got it.
Yeah, and then this one here, we're just summing this up. That Carney touts this deal that he signed with Europe to get LNG in 5 years. Like we turned it down. Like we could have been selling LNG a long time ago if for this lost decade when they kiboshed. Mark Carney was part of that decision to kibosh the Northern Gateway pipeline. It was his analysis that helped kibosh that. People forget that it was him. Like he was in that report. You can go back and watch it.
Well, he was one of the people, many of them, that spoke about LNG as kind of like actually quite nefarious, quite an evil substance, alongside oil, which gets all of the oil and coal get all the bad press. But there were many people like Mark Carney saying, no, actually, LNG is also really bad, especially when you can just build infinity solar panels and then everything will be fine.
He was also Canada's economic advisor during when they told the Europeans, the Germans specifically, and the Japanese and the South Koreans that there is no business case for LNG. And here it is, another election later, and now they're talking about how they're going to do it within 5 years. And like you said, now they're still touting these net zero emissions by 2050 and all this stuff. And
but as well, what's in my opinion, the two elephants in the room: First Nations, some First Nations, and Quebec, or if you want to be very specific, some people in Quebec, but in general, Quebec. Quebec is our access to. Quebec is Canada's Europe-facing province. You can't really do anything with Europe without Quebec, unless you're getting it from the Maritimes, and you don't need to go through Quebec. And the majority in Quebec don't want that, and they will do almost anything to stop that. So he says, oh, we're going to get it to Europe. Where are we going to build the facilities, LNG facilities in Quebec? They've already turned loads of them down. They were going to build one in Saguenay or something like that, weren't they, recently? That was just killed. I mean, realistically, how is it going to get through Quebec? Because the Bloc are going to be desperately searching for something to oppose to try and get their sort of credibility back. They'll be on that straight away. And then, we needn't even go into the details on certain First Nations who are just intransigent on this kind of thing.
Yeah, and then he was in Ukraine. He was talking about troops too, about putting Canadian boots on the ground. That was kind of our theme yesterday. But do we even have the troops to put on the ground? I didn't put this clip in here because because we have troops in Latvia, and then we're going to say we're going to put troops in Ukraine. Every time we make a commitment to put troops in a foreign land, like say we're going to put like 1,200 troops in Latvia or Ukraine as peacekeepers or security agreement, that means you got to have double that much here so you can rotate them out in and out. So that we don't have enough troops to do all this stuff that this guy is saying. This guy in this clip here, he says there's not enough troops. So you either got to get the numbers up, or, I mean, we have a military that they have been trying to recruit to for a number of years, and our complement right now is around 55,000, when supposedly our full complement is 76,000. That's a very small military for a nation of this large landmass size, and they can't convince people to join the military. It's underpaid, underfunded, under-equipped, and we're using equipment that is, like the jets are 40 years old. The submarine, there's 4 subs. I think only one is serviceable right now, and it's they're diesel subs we bought in the UK garage sale. And the military is in rough shape, and that's from a decade of a liberal. What's that word when you don't want to make a decision? Like those F-35s. Like, how long have they been sitting on those Stephen Harper ordered those jets, those F-35s. And then
procrastination, I think, is the word you're after, isn't it?
He squashed it, and then they reconsidered it and squashed it and reconsidered it. And now they're reconsidering, but with a smaller order. By the time they get around to ordering those jets, we'll be buying from the UK garage sale.
If we're lucky, maybe. They might have already sold it to Ukraine or something. But I mean, it's a very important point that you raised about the number of troops. Just while you were chatting there, just for a giggle, I looked at the most recent estimates now for the size of the Roman army in the Battle of Cannae, which is just quite a big battle during the Second Punic War, 216 BC. The Romans fielded in this one battle 86,400 troops. We're talking 2,200 years ago here. And the size of the Roman Empire in population terms, a tiny fraction of what Canada has now. I mean, that's a serious attempt, isn't it, to field an army there by the Romans 2 millennia ago. We now can't even match that. I mean, it gives you an indication of how tiny that really is. Another thing you might do is look at like some of the battles in the First World War, even the ones that Canada was involved in. And you look at, there were periods where over a period of like 3 days or something like that the casualty list would be longer than Canada's entire active military now, in the space of like 3 days. It's just not serious. It's not serious at all. It's barely even a militia at this point, isn't it? I mean, you can't expect to do anything serious, even if it's at full strength, which it isn't.
Oh. And this is from Holly Doyle and Blacklock, Sarah. And this is an internal report, though, from an in-house research report from the Department of Foreign Affairs. Says that Canada supported those retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. The public expected Canada would not back down in decision to. Canadians are close to 4 times more likely to support Canada imposing retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. goods than Americans on U.S. Imposing tariffs on Canadian goods. More than 8 in 10 Canadians would strongly or somewhat support continuing to impose retaliatory tariffs on imports from the United States if they support jobs. I don't know. This is an in-house
Mark Carney
report,
and the
though.
Liberals,
Let's keep that
they
in
knew
mind.
this.
Yeah.
They already knew this. That's why they ran the election the way they did.
Yeah.
They didn't believe in it necessarily. I'm sure Mark Carney thought it was a stupid idea, but he knew that it would help them win the election, and the evidence is in. It did help them win the election. But I mean, what this might indicate for the Liberals, if they're in the mood for being a little bit scared, is that that was kind of the crux of their popularity. That's the reason they won the election, and now they've backed down on it. So it might be the reason that they lose the next one, unless they can conjure up some kind of performance to show that they're really bashing the Americans in some other way.
The findings were drawn from questionnaires from 3,400 Canadian American residents. The Foreign Affairs Department paid $162,720 to Nanos for that survey. There you go.
Nice. I mean,
good job for Nanos.
I have to say that is a lot of money, isn't it, for one study? Usually they only cost a couple of grand, but I don't know. Maybe this was either this was a really big one, or Nanos just thought it's those mugs in Ottawa, like just pull a number out of your hat and they'll pay it.
Yeah, during the election, you referenced elbows up and saying that this is going to be a strategy to take on the Americans. That's from a reporter. You consistently said Donald Trump was trying to break us so he could own us. Your new argument today is Canada should accept basically the best of a bad deal. And what's the change? And this is his answer in a lot of these questions. Wait. I reject the premise of your question and your characterization of what I'm saying. Nobody has a deal like with the United States like we have. It was the same deal.
Except Mexico.
Yeah, but this is the same deal we had prior to all your posturing. Same deal, if not worse.
Well, it's not quite the same deal. It's 10 percentage points higher import taxes. So it's actually worse. And also, not to mention all the like copper and stuff that's been added, the tariffs.
And then
it is worse. It's worse than the deal we had under Justin Trudeau. I mean, that's another way to look at it if you wanted to.
And an opinion piece from the Globe and Mail said Mark Carney had no choice but to go elbows down, giving him some cover there. All our allies already have. Well, they never went elbows up. So what allies?
Yeah, because they approached it more honestly, because they didn't have the Canadian electorate to play with. The Canadian electorate, or at least a significant portion of it, is obsessively anti-American. And the Liberals are smart enough to see that and to play that game. Yeah, and obviously they weren't in an election, these other powers, so they didn't have to posture.
This headline is misleading.
I would just add, let's remember, Pierre Poilievre also jumped in for the same reason. He didn't start that way because he didn't start out being like volunteering to be stupid. He thought instead that he would remain smart and publicly smart as well as privately smart, while the Liberals were being publicly stupid. But he was eventually pushed because he saw the opinion polls, and then he started saying, "Yep, tariffs now, match all tariffs." Like, lest we forget, there was no opposition really to this Liberal strategy.
Daniel Smith was the only one that said calmer heads.
And I'm sure Pierre Poilievre would have opposed it if he was prime minister, but he decided to, be a phony and play the game because he thought that it would help him win the election.
The media was all in, and this headline here just runs cover. Oh, he had to do it. He had no choice to do it because all the allies already. Well, the allies never went elbows up, and here's the fact. And here's the fact of the matter. Even Mark Carney and Brookfield are in on this. Canadians pile up on U.S. stocks despite the trade war that Donald Trump started.
That's just sickening, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's $124 billion in U.S. stocks. Next slide there.
Because, energy stocks are the big boys, aren't they, in Canada, as you've said many times, and as is generally known. And yet, where are the big projects? Where are the big sort of signs? Where are the signals to investors that you can invest in energy in Canada? It's not looking very good, is it? So obviously they're going to go to America because, their markets are buzzing at the minute, aren't they?
Yeah, and then that leads right into Cabinet Minister Gregor Robertson, the new MP there, says, buy Canada. Policy needs a little work, especially after his ministry doled out, he's in charge of the Canada Infrastructure Bank, which doled out a $1 billion sweetheart loan to BC Ferries so it could buy ships from the Chinese shipyard, controlled by none other than the Communist Party of China. And he's attempted to dodge blame as the scandal rages on. Gregor Robertson, the decision to buy from China was not directly related to the federal government. Well, they gave him the money. Though he did add that the Liberals are looking at a Buy Canada policy. I thought that's all they were talking about was a Buy Canada policy. Well, like, were they looking at it? How can they be looking at it? Isn't that what they've been advertising the whole time? Now they're just looking at it? And historically, we haven't been the strongest on this. Like, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely gaslighting.
That's a bit of an understatement, isn't it?
This is like complete gaslighting. It's just, you rile up the Canadian electorate to hate the Americans and to say that you're going to buy Canada. And then the Liberal government doesn't do any of it. And if you look at the Mark Carney and the Liberals said that they were going to boycott Facebook because of the Bill C-18 mess they made. And they've spent, we need to update that story because you're going to do a story on Bill C-18 right away. And you might as well get that update because the last time you did that update, I think it was in March, they'd spent $5 million in the year, like 3 months, with Facebook. The platform that they said was the evil empire that's destroying journalism in Canada. The fact of the matter, the people destroying journalism in Canada is the Liberal government with Bill C-18. That's the fact. And you know what? We talked to Canadian press. We asked Canadian press for an interview as well, because they did 2 biased, atrocious articles on Bill C-18, again, supporting the Liberals' Bill C-18. And we asked for an interview with the managing editor there. And nothing. No response, no nothing. And you sent a scathing letter to Canadian press as well. Nothing. You get a response?
I thought that was quite polite, my message, but yeah, no response.
Nothing.
No, look, journalists, and they didn't edit the article, by the way, even though it obviously violated their own editorial principles, but they didn't edit it. Even though the Canadian press will tell you that they are the most honourable principled journalists in the land. They even sell little books telling journalists how to be ethical. What a joke. But I just wanted to say, sorry, go back to Gregor there. Gregor, good Scottish name. He's almost everything I will say everything that he said there, except that last line about not being strong on this, is misleading. It's almost designed to deceive, where he's saying it's not directly related to the federal government. It's a federal government loan, without which this deal would be impossible. It is his responsibility. He could also now recall that loan or kill it or do something to it, fiddle with it somehow, threaten, cajole, all the rest of it. It was his responsibility, and it is now also his responsibility. But not just his. His boss, who is responsible for him, Mark Carney,
has not answered to it.
Is the ultimate responsible individual.
And has not answered to it. I have a question for you.
Apparently.
Okay, I have a question for you. Can you go to the bank, and even the viewers, can you go to the bank and tell them you want, like a large loan, like say a couple $100,000 in relation, and not tell them what you're using it for? Will they give you the money? Will they?
And just say it's for a great investment opportunity. Trust me.
It's $1 billion, over $1 billion, and they're saying, well, the money's supposed to be used to fund Canadian infrastructure, not after it's built, like to fund jobs. And right now, what do we need? We need jobs. We need to use our copper, our aluminum, and our steel. And then they gave it to China, which we can't compete with, and on labor costs because they can pay slave wage labor. They have no industrial carbon tax, and they use inferior steel and aluminum.
No environmental regulations.
No environmental stuff. And then they said, the BC Ferries CEO, I'm not sure, I don't understand how he still has his job, says, well, cost was one of the considerations. Cost was one of the. How can
the whole thing is like transparently ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, you don't have to be some sort of expert to see how ridiculous this is. But it just goes on because I think Canadian society has become so partisan that if you're an NDP voter in BC, if you're a Liberal voter federally, you're just not interested. You just don't care because those are your boys. Like what's the alternative? John Rustad, Pierre Polyev, like they're disgusted by those people, so they'll stay in bed with the parties that they support just forever. I think until an alternative that on the left or on the liberal left pops up, then maybe they'll vote for them. But that's the reality. People are just so stuck. They're so trapped in their little partisan bubbles that this kind of thing just goes unscrutinized or unpunished.
Well, Dan Elbis headed up that, asked for the committee inquiry, and I think it's time we asked him for an update as to what's going on, because we're supposed to get some bunch of documents there. We'll see what we get, if it's a bunch of blacked out words there in the documents. I don't know how they're going to sell that. It's a security concern to tell us why they gave that money to the Chinese shipyards.
I'm looking forward to, I mean, I don't know if she's scheduled to appear, but if she is, I'd be looking forward to Chrystia Freeland trying to block every possible question that's thrown at her in the committee. That's a good thing to watch. If you think that Chrystia Freeland and the Liberal Party respect democracy, watch her performance in the Transport Committee and see if you change your mind.
And then another one from Holly Donna Blacklocks. The Department of Employment yesterday said it will hire more consultants. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Like Gomer Pyle, I think, used to say that. This time to interview employers to gain an in-depth understanding of its higher student program. The department earlier confirmed that it tripled spending on consultants because none of its, ready, 34,410 employees were available to do this. Wow. Hey? The department requires the services of a contractor to conduct 9 case studies to support the evaluation of the student work placement program. Another, just shovel money into this hole for consultants. No budget was disclosed for this 7-month contract. I want to take a guess at it. The department did not explain why managers could not do the work themselves, the 34,000. The case studies aim to capture the experiences, opinions, and perceptions of funding recipient organization employers of various sizes offering placement opportunities. We talked about that one yesterday where they faked success stories. And how much did they blow on that one? $130 million. And, and the Canadian electorate, again, basically silenced. The notice followed an internal December 9th briefing by her confirming the department in a single year, 2023, tripled its spending on consultants to $311 million, the equivalent of 6% of its entire budget. Does hiring consultants amount to using replacement work instead of public servants? Wow. What is that? Yeah, just wow. Wow, wow, wow.
$25 billion a year last year on consultants. I mean...
Carney said he's going to balance the operational budget in 3 years. We will spend what we need with the money we already have. The Prime Minister targeted a long-term savings of $25 billion over 3 years, provided no details, because you know what? There's never going to be any details.
Imagine what you could do, $25 billion. I mean, that could be one hell of an infrastructure project somewhere in this country that would really, it would be a benefit for probably like 100 years or something like that. But instead...
You can give $2 billion to the Ukrainians for drones. That goes right into Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. I don't know. Illegal immigrants.
But then I guess they'll be invested in those companies themselves, their own personal portfolio, I'm sure. So.
Illegal immigrants and refugee claimants occupy more than 1/10 of the bed in homeless shelters. And that's a memo from Housing Minister Gregor Robertson. Gregor, they're making the news today, making the rounds. Actual figures are likely higher, but unverifiable due to refusal of sanctuary cities like Vancouver to keep records on foreigners. There you go. Like, why embarrass yourself, right? Just keep it, say you refuse to do it. And immigrants, resettled refugees, and asylum claimants were more likely to access family shelters compared to Canadian citizens. That's why Canadians are sleeping out on the streets. Well.
So there's a higher percent, that's what that says, it's more likely among that group than Canadian citizens at large. I mean, that's craziness, isn't it? That yeah, you kind of have to ask, like, why are they brought to Canada in the first place if they're not even able
just
to
put them in
find
a
somewhere
homeless
to
shelter.
live?
And here it is, access without fear policies in sanctuary cities. This is kind of like, this again, what happens in the US just kind of bleeds up in here, especially all the democratic policies. Result in undeclared or missing citizenship data for a number of large shelters in urban areas in order to protect the personal information of non-citizens, said the note. This allows individuals to access services without fear of being deported or detained. Like, what? We have one arm of the government doing something where the other arm of the government says that's illegal. But hey.
Yeah, I wonder if you could. I wonder if you could go and like hold up a bank or something, steal some money, and then run to them and say, I'm really scared. You need to give me sanctuary. Would they do it then, or is it only certain kind of laws that they like you to break?
Pierre Poilievre put this out too when we talk about immigration. The Carney promised to lower the targets for temporary foreign workers, and we're already blown through that target. Carney Labour said they would keep that cap at 82,000 for all of 2025. We're only halfway through, and we're at 105,000. Well, youth unemployment is at 27-year low.
But the thing is, look, a lot of people kind of took him at his word, didn't they? That he was going to do this, and he was going to honor his promise. But he's already not honored lots of his promises. He's only a few months in. I mean, the budget as well. So he's also willing to violate like pretty old traditions within Canadian democracy. What exactly is there to ensure that he keeps his promises? His own party, are they going to rebel? I don't think so.
Here's a Toronto Sun running cover for him. Whoopsie. We're gonna have that slide.
No, they're having a laugh there, aren't they? They're mocking him.
Yeah, whoopsie. There you go.
It's so crazy, isn't it? Especially when you think of like unemployment among younger people, students, and that kind of thing. It doesn't make sense to bring in unskilled people, does it? I mean, you could even argue it doesn't make sense to bring in skilled people unless it's a very rare skill, rather than just train people in Canada. We're not exactly in a period of economic expansion right now, are we?
Yeah. And this last one here from Holly Donald Blacklock. Executives at the Public Health Agency in an internal report. They should publicize. It's funny how the mainstream media, the CBC and CTV, don't do a lot of these reports that Holly Donald seems to dig out, right? They just kind of like let these go. In an internal report, they were unprepared and poorly trained to manage the COVID outbreak that killed over 60,000 Canadians. The acknowledgement came 3 years after the agency awarded a Pandemic Heroes Medallion to every manager employee for their commitments towards pandemic relief. They said they're unprepared, but everybody gets a medal. It's like a participation badge, I guess, right?
Well, some people get a medal, some people get an Order of Canada.
Yeah, a lack of public health emergency management training was seen as an important gap in the early COVID-19 response. Oh, it's tough to read some of this stuff.
It is tough, and certainly when you point out the fact that there's just nobody in Canada highlights this except for Holly Dawn and Blacklock's. Basically, it's like the one organization in this whole country that points out this kind of craziness.
Yeah, they said that turmoil saw the agency cycle through 3 presidents in 13 months. Appointees included Ian Stewart, a $321,000-a-year exec, who became the first federal employee since 1891 to be censured for contempt of the floor House Commons. Stewart was ashamed for refusing to release records on the firing of the Chinese scientist following the RCMP raid at the agency's national microbiology lab in Winnipeg, which they said was linked to Wuhan. But hey, the agency at the height of the pandemic in 21 also paid, ready for this, almost $1.5 million in bonuses to a total of 78 execs and senior employees. Everybody gets a bonus. Everybody wins.
What the hell are they doing giving out bonuses there anyway? I mean, Christ. It's malfeasance, one might suggest.
And then this is here's a CTV one. The PBO offices 3.2 million homes are needed to close the housing gap. They say they were going to build all these homes, and they're not even on track to match last year.
But they are on track to beat last year's immigration numbers, so I'm sure that's going to work out somehow, isn't it?
Math,
balance each other out.
Not a skill for the Liberal Party. Math, not a skill.
I mean, yeah, the Liberals, I would say sort of the governing class in general, but the Liberals are in power, so yeah.
And that's Lisa Bildy had her first article published, I think it was in the National Post there. Professional bodies have become a major threat to free speech. I interviewed Lisa Bildy, and Pierre Poilievre has retweeted this, her article here, talking about restoring free speech. It's completely different. We talked about this yesterday. You can go watch yesterday's show. The difference between the Americans' First Amendment rights and the Canadian Charter rights, it's completely different. There's so many limitations. And the government here in Canada continues to make those limitations greater and greater.
And these colleges, man, they are by and large an absolute disgrace and do basically nothing whatsoever to protect the profession or anything like that. They just protect themselves, and they just charge sometimes crazy fees just so that you can get an email once a week talking about how, pronouns or some useless piece of information like that, like the latest sort of fad on the liberal left. And then obviously, if you have the misfortune of expressing an opinion at some point on the internet or something like that, then they'll come and destroy your life for you.
I would say something, maybe I'll get in trouble. The CPA Society there too as well. They spent the last 10 years basically talking about policies touted by the virtue signaling liberals instead of saying what an economic disaster is going on in Canada. You would think that they would spend more energy on the economic policies that have ravaged this nation and sent us into this economic downturn. The numbers speak for themselves. Speaking of numbers, though, Canada Post. You'd think they couldn't beat their old records, but hey, they report a $470 million loss before tax in their second quarter, and that's its largest quarterly loss on parcel revenue, and volumes fell 37% due to labor uncertainty. So there you go. You think they couldn't get worse, and they can.
I mean, yeah, one of their options, according to experts and analysts, one of their options is just to let the company just like die and incinerate, and then get rid of all of these striking workers and start again, try and get a kind of phoenix from the ashes situation going. Because like it doesn't seem to matter, does it? Every time that they release their quarterly results, every time it's like a new calamity, a new disaster, and it doesn't seem to change the mind of the striking workers. Like they're not listening to that. What they're bargaining for is just completely independent of the company's finances. So I don't know. I mean, it does kind of seem like it's just going to implode.
I think no different than Air Canada. Canada Post is like they believe they have an endless money supply because they can pick at the carcass of the Canadian taxpayer, not just have to rely on their own means, right? When the airline's in trouble, and when Canada Post's in trouble, they're they're supposedly separate from the government, but they definitely bleed into it. No different than BC Ferries. Here, this trucking thing in the States with that has brought a lot of attention to trucking. We've seen a lot of it here. And Charlie Kirk is a very influential podcaster or whatever he is, video YouTuber. And he highlighted the immigrant truck driver in Canada plowing through that stop sign, hit a bus and killed 16 people. That was the Humboldt, Saskatchewan, right? And he served 6 years in prisons. And after getting out, he's actively fought deportation. And then, of course, the newspapers here in Canada, like opinion pieces, like look at these opinion pieces. Why we shouldn't deport the truck driver involved in the Humboldt Broncos crash. And then the next one here is deporting lessens us as a country. The media in Canada is there's something wrong. And then here, if you got to remember, these trucks are like about 50 tons, and a car is like light cars are under a ton, and then some are maybe like some are heavier ones, a couple tons. But again, take a basic physics course, and you'll see the difference here. But here's another example. We're going to play this small clip.
That's like my biggest fear when it comes to trucks on highways, is when they just come behind you like that, because there's just nothing that you can do. It's not like you can make some sort of turn or something. You're just screwed, aren't you?
Like it's basic physics again. Like you can't stop those trucks on a dime, and you surely can't maneuver them like quickly. So if you're distracted while you're driving, this is bound to happen.
And you're bound to be distracted while driving if all you do in your life is drive. Obviously, you're going to get sick of it. You get distracted doing anything for like 16, 17 hours a day, as some of them do.
Like we were, like every time that somebody said anything about like that piece that was done by, I think it was Global ongoing in that investigative piece and finding you can buy a license. Like, why aren't the mainstream outlets doing this story and talking about trucker safety? We're going to try and get, like maybe the CVSE on and maybe a large trucking company to talk about this problem. Because this is huge. We see it all the time. I mean, how many stories do we do about truck accidents in British Columbia?
But it's also kind of linked, isn't it? I mean, there's lots of things going on here. There's a kind of like economic liberalism gone wrong, because a lot of the people are trying to make as much money as they possibly can, aren't they? And that kind of get ahead attitude, and some might say greedy attitude, that's at play. So you think that would upset the left? You'd expect the Tyee to be writing an article about that, but apparently not. But then the other thing is, it's an indictment of mass immigration, isn't it? People that aren't being vetted properly, aren't being tested properly to see if they have the skills needed. But then there's also something that's a little bit harder to qualify, a little bit harder to explain, which is the idea that we've brought people in from a completely alien, different culture who have no connection whatsoever to this country. And you have to sense that maybe that plays some kind of a role in the occasional recklessness that we see. Because if you don't feel a connection or a bond or anything like that with the country, you're going to be less likely to fret about things like safety and obeying all the rules and whatnot. I would wager.
Like, you're watching this, autonomous driving can't come soon enough to bring road safety into play. Like, it's like, anyway. Yeah. And then here we go, like, because they're talking about cutting budgets for diversity and inclusion, and here come the newspapers. Advocates warn federal budget cuts could reduce diversity and inclusion initiatives.
It's amazing, that article. I read it yesterday, and it's I think like the first quote is something like, "People go on as if we're a luxury option or something like that, but we're actually essential. We're the first to be cut." It's like, come on.
And then here's the one where all the universities and colleges, and like you said, when you were in that Uber car there, like, what was that? The catering college that was taking advantage of immigrant funding for education. Look at this. Now CTV is plumping this out. We need talent. University Canada warns student cap costing of gifted candidates. So they're coming up with a reason why we need to increase foreign students in Canada. What about teaching some Canadian kids, that you cut out from the caps that you have there?
But also a completely vague term. A word that means literally nothing. Gifted. That's just up to the person who sat there with the, determining whether or not to accept an applicant. They say, "Oh yeah, that pastry that this student has made, absolutely excellent. He's gifted. He's coming to our catering college because he's gifted pastry maker."
Another way to reword that headline for CTV there is, "Canadian students too stupid to allow us to have any chance of any intelligence." Because we need the foreign students that may be gifted instead of the stupid Canadian.
It's absurd. I mean, I doubt there's anybody in this country that would say, no, don't bring in the next Einstein, who the whole world is talking about. He's like the greatest physicist. He's a 19-year-old or something. He wants to come to university in Vancouver or whatever. Like, absolutely, let's get this guy. Nobody would say no to that. But I think the reality is that everybody knows that that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, in many cases, people that want to get, humanities degrees and stuff like that. Like, they want to get a sort of sociology or an English literature degree or something like that. I mean, no, that's unnecessary, obviously, isn't it? And and I'm sure in many cases it really will be the catering people again. These people that, they can be as gifted as you want. It doesn't really justify changing the immigration system to accommodate them, does it? Because they can make a nice cake. I mean, no, thank you.
One of the things that Trump asked for was like a border czar, fentanyl czar for Canada. And here it is. This guy testifies and says that he told the Americans, "I have no influence on Canadian federal police or border agencies." So he's saying he's basically just a figurehead that has no. This is from Sam Cooper, a journalist in British Columbia that does some really good work. So. And Dan Elvis puts out, "This is embarrassing to all involved. No strategic plan. I don't even know if it's relevant anymore. It's just another Trudeau NDP type program that sounded good. Again, just more window dressing. Give some guy a salary." And this guy at least has the courage to say, like, "I don't do anything." Not like that lady with Sky Canada that's getting on just under $400,000 a year to stare out the window.
I doubt he gave that up voluntarily or like right off the bat. He was probably pressured by the Americans, who, as most of us familiar with Americans are aware, don't accept BS, do they? By and large, the American people. So they'll have just kept asking questions. So like, so what do you do? So can you do this? Can you enforce this? And he'll have eventually just kind of had to say, no, I don't have any power. But I really thought that was pretty obvious right from the get-go, just based on the name of the job title, Fentanyl Czar, which was just a desperate attempt to try and sound American and to try and appease Donald Trump and say, look at this thing I've done. That sounds like the thing that you've done. Like, can we be friends now?
Yeah, one of our regular viewers there, Ian, says that we should play that clip there from Media Bearzan on the trucker. We played that yesterday. We played a clip from him yesterday. Daniel Smith. Again, Daniel Smith calmly, coolly goes about making Alberta better every day. And here it is. She's talking about nuclear energy. Let's play a little clip here from Daniel Smith.
We see the potential for nuclear energy to transform Alberta, to provide good jobs and prosperity, and set us on a solid footing for the future.
That's good, like this. He's got some music playing in the background there. But BC is all against nuclear energy. Well, they're just going to park it next to your doorstep there. So what about that?
Crackers, isn't it, really? Yeah, I just don't know what to say there. But they certainly, nuclear would be good for them, as we've said many times. They've got the sort of geography for it, haven't they?
We did this story. Sean Foyt, that concert that was going to take place in West Kelowna in a park there was canceled. They pulled the permit there because they said they were worried about security. Turns out the concert was held up in Joe Rich there, just east of Kelowna, and it went off with how many security concerns? That's right, 0. 0.
No significant issues reported. Yeah.
All the concerts he's had across Canada, how many security concerns have there been? Other than people, the protesters walking in there and throwing smoke bombs and stuff like that. So the security concerns weren't from, like the attendees and from the Christian singer himself. They were from the people protesting it. But they even had somebody go up there because they were checking the numbers. And we did the story. It's good story. You can go watch it on Kelowna Now, right? Because the city of West Kelowna denied him a permit over potential public safety risks. And
but that's it's victim blaming, isn't it? And that's happened. This is something that happens in England, where the people complain about the protests in Toronto, where they say that they're doing the pro-Palestine protests like every week. That's also happening in London, in England, and some people have gone to these protests with an Israeli flag or something like that. I think somebody even had like an England flag, and they were arrested. And the police said it's for a public order offence because your presence here is likely to make this mob of people violent and angry and create a sort of situation. And it's the same principle here, isn't it? It's like you might be peaceful, but your presence is likely to incite protesters to do something dangerous. I mean, it doesn't sound fair, really, does it?
The federal government said they were going to go after pretendians, and now this woman, who's Michelle Christine Cameron, is being sued. And she's described as a researcher specializing in First Nations because she called out 4 women as pretendians. And they're seeking $500,000 in damages.
Libel. But again, like I've said, what's the logical endpoint of this? It's DNA tests. It's something like Gattaca, the movie, where you have to have your DNA analyzed before it's decided what door you can go into in a building or something like that. It's stupid. Why not just put the whole thing in the bin and go back to old ideas of everybody being equal?
Well, right here in our backyard, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency says they want those birds killed. But Dr. Oz, the billionaire from the United States of America, says he wants to see those birds move to the United States. So this saga is not over.
He was going on about how penicillin was discovered, which was like, I don't know if you know that story, where like it was like fungus developed on
mold. Yeah,
I can't remember what it was now. Yeah, some bowl.
Cheese,
yeah, and then it was like, and so Oz is saying that it's like, science works like that sometimes. So it might actually lead to a scientific breakthrough. I don't really know about the validity of that, but if the Americans are asking for these birds, why not just give them to them? You know, it's another gesture of
Hey, we
goodwill.
could use the money. Just sell him the birds. He's got lots. He's got lots of money. Sell him the birds. We don't think that way, though, right? We want to just make sure they're dead. Dead. And this one here, I watched this clip, and these two young girls pulled out a knife and an axe, basically. She was packing around her. Her dad must have armed her with some things, because there's, like these rapes that are going on in England here. And so she was like telling the guy to stay away from her. And she's been charged.
There's hell on in Britain. I mean, this is Scotland rather than England, but I mean, there's absolute chaos on the streets. Some guy's just been charged with, I think it was 14-year-old girls in London that he was soliciting or something like that, and he was literally came on the dinghies, the little boats that come across the English Channel, and then he was put in a hotel in Canary Wharf in London. That's one of the financial centres in London, very sort of expensive place. He's put in a hotel there, and then arrested and charged with sexually assaulting kids. But this one is like astonishing, isn't it?
She was being harassed. She was being harassed, and I guess she was a little prickly. She pulled out an axe and a knife and said, "Get away from me." She wasn't like chasing him down the street trying to kill him. She was basically saying, "Get away from me."
Yeah, and her sister, I think she was saying, "Get away from my sister. She's 12." If I got the quote right. I mean, we have a laugh, but it's pretty gruesome, isn't it? But I suppose maybe being from that deprived land, I'm a bit sort of hardened to it at this point. It's just becoming so frequent, so common.
They were after Pete Hegseth's job there when he accidentally looped in a reporter on his like WhatsApp chat group or whatever. But here it is. It is a Liberal minister that let somebody in, and they were talking about how they're going to make a 15% cut, and then there was a reporter looped in there. And Dan Elman said, a lot of alarm bells in this story of a reporter being inadvertently included in a group chat discussion to cut staff for the Minister of Environment. Beyond incompetence of the minister's staff, this was not a casual let's meet for a drink later group chat. Serious public policy directions, cuts to a water agency versus the main department were being deliberated with direction given by the minister's chief of staff. So there you go. Are they going to call for her job?
It's a huge scandal, isn't it?
Yeah. And then Gavin Dew put out this piece here, and this is the Global Okanagan did this story on this poll. British Columbia is increasingly souring on a federal and provincial electric vehicle mandates. And this is typically how it works. As it gets closer to the time when these things start to go into force, then people start to, chirp about them. I remember when the Liberals floated the idea that they were going to tax all SUVs $5,000 because they were too big a vehicle, and then Guilbeault didn't want people driving them.
They've done that in some parts of the world.
You drive an SUV.
Well, it's one of those compact ones that's, I guess, kind of.
$5,000.
I'm sure the government would see it as an SUV if there was money in it for them.
Stop making excuses. Just send the money.
And also a video where I say sorry to Mother Earth for polluting. It's a hybrid moral. Anyway, so they can bugger off.
No. It's an SUV. And this is where we have a little bit of, these are just like absolutely ridiculous, kind of like our Are You Serious section. But Metro Vancouver residents now must register their fireplaces. See, you got to register your fireplace or face a fine. You got to register. If you're going to burn some wood, make sure you're registered.
This is just that's almost anti-Canadian, that, isn't it? That's
and then this one here,
craziness.
Vancouver parents blocked from teaching their kids to swim in public pools. Oh, you're jumping ahead there. Like, because why would you want to be able to teach your kids to swim? I have no idea. But the next one here, and this is Pierre Poilievre there. The free ride's over. I don't know. Now you can put it on. Now you
riding on his little electric unicorn.
There you go. There you go.
Certainly made Poilievre look a bit overweight there, and his big belly.
Looks like Doug Ford, I think, right? Maybe he's trying to make him look. Because actually, Poilievre's quite built. He actually works on his physical. Yeah. Doug Ford, on the other hand,
he says he's like obsessed with it, isn't he?
Yeah. Doug Ford, on the other hand, not so much. Doug Ford,
yeah, he's kind of leaning into that, isn't he? He's leaning into his portly, friendly sort of vibe.
And in this one, just like we're going to do a tech one here, but Xpeng is dropping LiDAR and switching to vision-based. Turns out Tesla might be right. But we saved this best one for last, because guess who's getting ready? This is the Rocky 2. Check it out. Let's play the clip here from... he's getting ready. Okay. There's something seriously wrong with that guy. Hey?
It reminded me of Rocky, that actually. There's a lot of that in Rocky, isn't there? Where he's doing the air punches.
Well, you know, we were doing Fool of the Day. We left the best for last because that guy right there. I think he's almost a Hall of Famer, though, too. Him and Justin, they should have, like, retire their jerseys into the rafters.
Yeah, no, he's too good. You can't compete with him. And I honestly wonder if we'll ever see his like again. If we'll ever see that caliber again.
Hey, you know what? He may run for mayor of like Vancouver or something.
Well, he's from where's he from? Somewhere in Ontario. Maybe he'll go home to Ontario and try and stir the pot.
I thought he was riding in Surrey.
He came to Burnaby. That's where he got his seat, but he was parachuted in there, just like
oh no,
just like
no,
Polyev,
you're not
just
allowed
like
to
what's
do
his
that,
name?
right? Just like Carney and but Pierre Polyev, like the media, the Canadian media. I mean that they're still giving airtime to that Bronnie Critchley.
Yeah, because she's talking about how it was unfair somehow, wasn't it?
Well, it obviously was. Because he was parachuted in, and you know, like the Canadian media, the government-funded, liberal government-funded media, continues to point out that he was parachuted in. At the same time, ignoring that Mark Carney not only was parachuted in, they ripped a plant out. They ripped the guy out. What was the guy's name?
Chandra Arya.
Chandra Arya. They just basically said, "You're done." They made him take his sign down.
And it's so funny, isn't it, though, Jim? Like, maybe we should go back and watch our videos where we were discussing. We were saying, like, what's he going to do? Because it looked like he might be having a go in Edmonton, and then that they were going to get rid of the Randy Boissonneau guy, who the pretendian he's been accused of being. We thought, all right, that's probably it, isn't it? That's what they're going to do. But then we were talking to each other, and we were like, well, how else are they going to do it? You know? And it didn't even enter our innocent, naive little minds that they could do something as cynical as that, as just, oh, you know, this guy who's come out and said things that we don't like about French and he's a bit awkward. Yeah, let's just get rid of him and put Mark Carney in that seat. Like that I can honestly say that didn't even enter my mind. I don't have that kind of slimy lizard brain.
And then both Chandra and Ruby Dalla were just surgically removed from the Liberal Party.
Yeah, both of them not white. One of them a woman, and we're supposed to believe that the Liberal Party gets angry if other parties don't elect women and people that aren't white. But in the case of the Liberal Party, just get the knives out. Julius Caesar them in the as they stand there.
Yeah, everybody should go watch Justin Trudeau on the Kamala Harris law and listen to his virtuous discussion, and then go and play the clips of what they did to Chrystia Freeland even, and Ruby Dalla.
Yeah, Chrystia Freeland, easy to forget the way that Trudeau just completely threw her under the bus.
Yeah, just like a clown show. Absolute clown show. And the media doesn't cover those stories. It's just the one that puzzles me a lot is if you look at all the stuff that when we talk about Holly Dolan Black, because you're not going to get this stuff anywhere else, the stuff from Holly Dolan Blacklocks, you can go subscribe there. But why does the mainstream media ignore those stories? Like that one that, like the lady for Sky Canada, like almost $400,000 a year, and the staff of 7, $400,000 for her to find aliens in Canada.
Because those media organizations basically protect the establishment. They protect the status quo, and they don't want to go.
Do you know where the aliens are? Do you know where they are, though? They're in one of the homeless shelters in a sanctuary city. Because they won't disclose them there. That's where they are. That's where they're hiding.
Do we use the term alien here? I'd say it's certainly in law, isn't it, in America, like the Alien Act and stuff like that. But I don't know if we use that in Canada.
They're from Planet Dystopia. Anyway, that's our show for today. We'd like you to share, like, subscribe, do all those things. And, if you want us to get out to a bigger audience. And if you think independent media matters in Canada, then show your support, hitting like, subscribe, and sharing it. Or if you like CBC and CTV, then go watch it and send them more money because they need it.
Go and tell on us. Go and rat on us and tell CBC how naughty we are and how we don't trot out the establishment line. I'm sure they'll find the resources and the time to write an expose on our evil.
Yeah, and the Canadian press goes for them too. All right. Thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.